What would you do if you discovered that the person sleeping next to you every night, the one who promised to love and protect your family, had been violating your children's privacy and trust for years? Rebecca Mitchell, a 42-year-old former detective with a reputation for composure under pressure, never imagined she would become the center of a murder investigation. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But on a crisp autumn morning in Lakeside, Oregon, her picture-perfect family life shattered when she uncovered a devastating secret. Her husband, Daniel, had been secretly recording their teenage children, Emma and Noah, in their most private moments. For 7 years, this violation had occurred right under her roof, perpetrated by the man she had trusted with her life and her children's safety. The discovery set in motion a series of events that would end with Daniel dead on their bedroom floor, Rebecca in handcuffs, and a community left wondering how they never saw the darkness hiding behind the Mitchell family's seemingly perfect facade. Rebecca wasn't born into law enforcement. She found her way there through determination and an unwavering sense of justice. Growing up in a modest home on the outskirts of Portland, Rebecca learned early that protecting the vulnerable was her calling. Her father, a construction worker who raised her single-handedly after her mother abandoned them when Rebecca was just 6, taught her that strength wasn't about physical power, but about standing firm in your principles. These lessons guided Rebecca through police academy and into a distinguished career as a detective, specializing in crimes against children. Her colleagues respected her for her methodical approach and her uncanny ability to connect with traumatized young victims. She had a gift for making children feel safe enough to share their stories, often breaking cases wide open when others had hit dead ends. Rebecca wasn't just good at her job, she was exceptional, receiving commendations for her work in dismantling a regional child exploitation network that had operated undetected for years. But the emotional toll of witnessing humanity's darkest impulses day after day began to wear on Rebecca. After a particularly harrowing case involving a local teacher, she made the difficult decision to step away from active police work. She channeled her expertise into establishing Sentinel Cybersecurity, a consulting firm that worked with schools and families to protect children from online predators. The career change allowed her to continue making a difference while reclaiming some balance in her life. It was during a cybersecurity seminar at Evergreen Tech Solutions that Rebecca first met Daniel Mitchell. Unlike many of the tech professionals she encountered, Daniel didn't dismiss the human element of cybersecurity. He understood that behind every data point was a real person potentially at risk. His compassion, combined with his brilliant mind and quiet confidence, drew Rebecca to him immediately. Their courtship was swift but not impulsive. Both in their 30s, they knew what they wanted. Daniel had never been married, focused instead on building his career and caring for his aging parents. Rebecca had a brief marriage in her 20s that ended when her ex-husband couldn't handle the demands of her detective work. With Daniel, everything felt different. He supported her passion for child safety and seemed to admire her strength rather than feel threatened by it. Within 18 months, they were married in a simple ceremony at Lakeside Park, with just close friends and family in attendance. Daniel surprised Rebecca by purchasing a beautiful home near the water, complete with a spacious yard and rooms for their future children. "I want us to build something lasting," he told her on their first night in the house, "a safe place where our family can grow." Those words meant everything to Rebecca, who had spent her career seeing how quickly safety could be stolen. Emma came first, a bright-eyed baby girl who had Rebecca's determination and Daniel's analytical mind from the start. 2 years later, Noah joined their family, quieter than his sister, but with a gentle soul that drew people to him. Rebecca cut back her consulting hours to focus on the children, while Daniel's career at Evergreen Tech Solutions flourished. He worked long hours, but always made time to coach Noah's soccer team and attend Emma's debate competitions. The Mitchells became fixtures in their lakeside community. Rebecca volunteered at the school and led internet safety workshops for parents. Daniel served on the town's technology committee, helping modernize systems and improve security for local businesses. From the outside, they epitomized the perfect modern family, successful, involved, and genuinely happy. But as the years passed, subtle shifts occurred in their household. Daniel began insisting on handling all the family's technology needs. He installed the home security system himself, upgraded the Wi-Fi network, and maintained everyone's devices. At the time, Rebecca saw this as a natural division of labor. She handled safety outside the home, while he managed it within their walls. She never questioned when he established strict rules about bedroom privacy or when he installed new smoke detectors in the children's rooms that seemed unnecessarily sophisticated. Technology changes so quickly, he would say, when Rebecca occasionally questioned an upgrade. With your background, you know better than anyone that we can't be too careful. And she would nod, proud that her husband took their family's safety as seriously as she did. When Emma turned 13, she began showing signs of withdrawal, typical for a teenager, spending more time alone in her room, becoming protective of her phone, and responding to questions with one-word answers. Noah, at 11, remained his sweet self, but grew increasingly anxious about seemingly minor issues. Rebecca attributed these changes to normal adolescent development and the pressures of school. Daniel suggested installing parental monitoring software on their devices, not to spy, he insisted, but to make sure they're safe online. Rebecca agreed, though she made sure the children knew about the monitoring. No secrets, she told them during a family meeting. Dad and I respect your privacy, but our job is to keep you safe. Looking back, the irony of those words would haunt her. As Emma and Noah navigated their teen years, Rebecca noticed Daniel becoming increasingly protective and sometimes controlling. He questioned Emma about her friends, monitored Noah's gaming activities with unusual scrutiny, and occasionally checked the children's rooms when they were at school. When Rebecca suggested he was overstepping, Daniel would remind her of cases she'd worked on, predators who had manipulated children, ruined lives, stolen innocence. "You've seen what can happen," he would say. "I'm just making sure it never happens to our kids." His reasoning made sense to Rebecca, especially given her background. Still, something felt off, a nagging feeling she couldn't quite place. Sarah Cooper, her best friend and colleague at Sentinel, noticed it too. "Daniel seems awfully invested in controlling their online lives," Sarah commented after a barbecue where Daniel had spent much of the evening checking the family's security cameras through his phone. "It's almost like he doesn't trust them." "He's just protective," Rebecca defended. "After what we've seen in our work, can you blame him?" Sarah gave her a long look. "There's protective, Beck, and then there's something else. Just keep your eyes open, okay?" Rebecca dismissed her friend's concerns, but the seed of doubt had been planted. She began paying closer attention to Daniel's behavior around the children. He always seemed to know details about their days that they hadn't shared at dinner. He sometimes made comments about their friends or activities that suggested knowledge he shouldn't have had. When pressed, he would attribute it to good guesswork or mention something the children had supposedly told him when Rebecca wasn't around. The first concrete sign that something was wrong came when Emma approached Rebecca after school one afternoon, her face tight with anger and confusion. "Mom, did you or Dad go through my journal?" she demanded. Rebecca was taken aback. "Of course not, honey. We would never invade your privacy like that." "Then how did Dad know about Jason breaking up with Lily? I only wrote about it in my journal. I never told anyone else." Rebecca felt a chill. Maybe he overheard you talking on the phone. Emma shook her head firmly. I've only texted about it with Lily, and I've never mentioned it out loud. He knew details, Mom. Specific details that were only in my journal. Rebecca promised to talk to Daniel, but when confronted, he laughed it off. Teenagers think everything is a conspiracy. Emma probably mentioned it and doesn't remember. Or maybe Jason and Lily aren't as discreet as she thinks. It could be all over school. The explanation was plausible, and Rebecca wanted to believe it. But that night, she lay awake, the detective part of her mind turning over the inconsistencies. 2 weeks later, Noah had a similar experience. He'd been struggling with anxiety about a science presentation and had practiced in his room, alone. Yet Daniel knew precisely which parts Noah was worried about and offered specific advice. When Noah questioned how he knew, Daniel claimed Noah had been talking loudly enough to hear through the door. But Noah insisted he'd been practicing in whispers, afraid of being overheard and judged. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. These incidents, combined with Sarah's warnings, pushed Rebecca to do something she never thought she would: investigate her own husband. She began by casually checking his browsing history, finding nothing suspicious. Next, she examined their bank statements, discovering several purchases from electronic suppliers that Daniel had never mentioned. When asked, he attributed them to work projects he'd brought home. Rebecca might have accepted his explanations if not for a chance discovery by Emma. While charging her phone in Daniel's home office, a room he usually kept locked when not in use, she noticed a small external hard drive hidden behind his desktop computer. Curious, she connected it to her laptop and found it password protected. Using skills she'd learned in her computer class, Emma managed to bypass the basic security. What she found left her shaking and nauseated. The drive contained thousands of video and audio files, meticulously organized into folders labeled with her and Noah's names, further categorized by dates going back 7 years. Random sampling of the files revealed recordings from their bedrooms, bathrooms, and other private spaces in the house. Some captured ordinary moments: homework, phone, calls with friends, changing clothes. Others documented private moments no parent should ever witness. Emma, displaying remarkable composure despite her horror, didn't confront her father immediately. Instead, she reached out to her Aunt Rachel, Rebecca's sister, who advised her to take the hard drive directly to her mother. That evening, while Daniel worked late, Emma and Rachel showed Rebecca what they'd found. Rebecca's world collapsed as she viewed file after file, the evidence of betrayal mounting with each click. The sophisticated smoke detectors, the specially installed mirrors, even the stuffed animals in Noah's room, all contained hidden cameras and microphones, feeding a constant stream of her children's most intimate moments directly to Daniel's private collection. I don't understand, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Why would Dad do this to us? What's wrong with him? Rebecca had no answers, only a cold, mounting rage unlike anything she'd ever experienced. As a detective, she'd faced child predators with professional detachment. As a mother discovering her husband's violation of their children, that detachment shattered completely. Rachel took the children to her home for the night, promising to keep them safe, while Rebecca confronted Daniel. Be careful, Rachel warned, before leaving. Men like this, men who hide so completely, you never know what else they're capable of. Rebecca spent hours reviewing the files, documenting the extent of the violations, and preparing herself for the confrontation. Her training told her to remain calm, to secure evidence, to think strategically. But her maternal instinct screamed for immediate action. She contacted Detective Marcus Rodriguez, a former colleague who now headed the Crimes Against Children unit, sending him select files and explaining the situation. "This is enough for an arrest warrant," Rodriguez confirmed after reviewing the evidence. "We can pick him up at work tomorrow morning. Don't confront him alone, Rebecca. These situations can escalate quickly." Rebecca agreed to wait, to let the system she'd served for so many years handle the situation. But when Daniel returned home just after midnight, earlier than expected, the careful plan crumbled. He found Rebecca sitting at his desk, the hard drive connected to her laptop, screenshots of the videos spread across the screen. "What are you doing in my office?" he demanded, his voice unnaturally calm despite the evidence of his crimes laid bare before him. Rebecca turned slowly, facing the man she had loved and trusted for 14 years. "How could you, Daniel? They're your children." For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened. "You wouldn't understand. It's not what you think." "I was a detective for 15 years, Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I've heard every excuse, every rationalization. There is no explanation that could make this anything other than what it is, a violation and betrayal of the worst kind." Daniel stepped further into the room, closing the door behind him. "Where are the kids?" "Safe, away from you." Rebecca stood, putting the desk between them. "The police have copies of everything. They're coming for you in the morning." Something changed in Daniel's demeanor, the mask of the loving father and husband dropping completely to reveal something cold and calculating beneath. "You think you can take my family from me? After everything I've built? You destroyed this family the moment you put the first camera in Emma's room." Rebecca shot back. 7 years, Daniel. 7 years of watching our children in their most private moments. What kind of father does that? "A protective one," he insisted, his voice rising. "You of all people should understand the dangers out there. I needed to know they were safe at all times." Rebecca felt sick at his justification. This wasn't protection, this was violation, this was abuse. Daniel lunged suddenly, grabbing for the hard drive. But Rebecca was faster, snatching it away and backing toward the door. "It's over, Daniel. Tomorrow you'll be arrested, and Emma and Noah will never have to see you again." His face contorted with rage as he charged toward her. Rebecca's training kicked in automatically, a defensive stance, a calculated sidestep. But Daniel was stronger than she anticipated, fueled by desperation. He slammed her against the wall, his forearm pressing against her throat. "You're not taking my children," he growled, pressing harder. "No one will believe you anyway. The respected tech expert versus the burnout ex-cop. I'll tell them you planted everything, that you're having a breakdown, imagining conspiracies because of all the horrible things you saw on the job." Rebecca struggled for breath, spots dancing before her eyes. In that moment, she saw with perfect clarity what her children's future would look like if Daniel succeeded. Years of continued abuse, their abuser walking free, perhaps even gaining custody if he managed to discredit her. The thought gave her a surge of strength. With a practice move, she broke his hold and pushed him back. Daniel stumbled but quickly recovered, lunging for her again. Their struggle took them from the office into the hallway, then to their bedroom. When Daniel grabbed a heavy crystal award from his nightstand, a recognition from Evergreen Tech for his cybersecurity innovations, and raised it to strike her, Rebecca reached for the weapon she'd hoped never to use again. The sound of the gunshot seemed to freeze time itself. Daniel looked almost surprised as he dropped the award, his hand moving to the spreading red stain on his chest. He took one stumbling step toward Rebecca before collapsing to the floor. Rebecca stood motionless, the gun still raised as blood pooled around the body of the man she had once believed was her perfect match. In the stillness that followed, a strange calm settled over her. She lowered the weapon slowly, then reached for her phone to call Detective Rodriguez. "It's Rebecca Mitchell," she said when he answered, her voice oddly steady. "Daniel came home early. There's been a shooting. He's dead." And then she sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for the sirens that would soon pierce the quiet lakeside night, knowing that while one nightmare had ended, another was just beginning. The flashing lights of police vehicles illuminated the suburban street as neighbors gathered in hushed clusters, watching the Mitchell home become a crime scene. Rebecca sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Despite the mild night air, she answered Detective Rodriguez's questions mechanically, her mind still processing the violent end to her 14-year marriage. "He came at me with the award," she explained, gesturing to the heavy crystal object now bagged. "As evidence, I had no choice." Rodriguez, who had worked alongside Rebecca years ago, maintained his professional distance. "The gun was registered to you?" "Yes. From my days on the force, I kept it locked in our bedroom safe." Her voice remained steady. "Daniel didn't know I still had it." As dawn broke over Lakeside, Rebecca found herself in an interrogation. A room at the police station, this time on the wrong side of the table. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a creeping dread about what would happen next. Would anyone believe her? Or would Daniel's final words prove prophetic? The respected tech expert against the burnout ex-cop? While Rebecca answered questions, a team of digital forensics experts began the painstaking process of examining the hard drive Emma had discovered. What they found exceeded even Rebecca's worst fears. Beyond the recordings of Emma and Noah, investigators discovered images of other children, friends who had visited the Mitchell home, teammates from Noah's soccer club, students from Emma's debate team. The violation extended far beyond his own family. More disturbing still was evidence that Daniel had been selling access to these recordings on encrypted forums, generating substantial income that he had hidden in offshore accounts. The devoted father, supportive husband, and respected community member had been running a sophisticated exploitation operation from their family home for years. The district attorney, initially planning to pursue murder charges against Rebecca, quickly shifted focus as the evidence mounted. 2 weeks after the shooting, Rebecca was released from custody. The official ruling, justifiable homicide in defense of self and others. The case was closed from a legal standpoint, but for Rebecca and her children, the nightmare was far from over. Emma and Noah remained with their Aunt Rachel, unable to return to the home where they had been violated for so many years. When Rebecca was finally reunited with them, the emotional damage was painfully evident. Noah barely spoke, jumping at unexpected sounds and refusing to change clothes unless locked in a bathroom with the lights off. Emma, once confident and outgoing, now scrutinized every room she entered for hidden cameras, dismantling air vents, and removing light fixtures in desperate searches for recording devices. "I keep thinking I missed something," she told her mother during one particularly difficult night. "That there are still cameras somewhere, that people are still watching." Rebecca sold their house, unable to bear the thought of living there again. The new, smaller home she purchased across town was carefully inspected by Detective Rodriguez himself, who certified it free of any surveillance equipment. Still, rebuilding trust proved nearly impossible. The children insisted on checking and rechecking their rooms daily. Electronic devices were banned, except for a single shared laptop kept in the living room. Privacy, once taken for granted, had become a luxury they couldn't afford. Dr. Elaine Wong, a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, began working with the family 3 times weekly. "What you're experiencing is normal," she assured them. During their first session, your sense of safety was violated in the most intimate way possible by someone you should have been able to trust completely. Recovery won't be linear and it won't be quick. For Rebecca, guilt became a constant companion. How had she, a trained detective who had built a career on protecting children, failed to protect her own? The signs had been there: Daniel's, insistence on controlling the home technology, his unusual interest in the children's private lives, the convenient work projects that kept him in his office for hours. Had she been so desperate to believe in their perfect life that she'd willingly blinded herself to the truth? Sarah Cooper, who had tried to warn her, became Rebecca's lifeline in the months following Daniel's death. She took over day to day operations at Sentinel Cybersecurity, allowing Rebecca to focus on her family's healing. "You can't blame yourself," Sarah insisted during their regular coffee meetings. Daniel was careful. He fooled everyone, colleagues, friends, neighbors, even me, and I was suspicious. But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that she should have known sooner. "I investigated predators for 15 years, she would respond. "I knew the signs, the patterns. How did I miss this?" 6 months after the shooting, Rebecca received an unexpected call from Detective Rodriguez. "We need you to come in," he said, his voice grave. "There's something you should see." At the station, Rodriguez led her to a conference room where digital evidence from Daniel's case was spread across the table. "We've been working with federal investigators to identify all the victims in Daniel's files," he explained. "It's been challenging." Rebecca nodded, steeling herself. "How many?" 43 children total, including Emma and Noah. Most were just recordings, but some. He trailed off, then redirected. "That's not why I called you here. We found something else, something that might help you understand how this happened." He opened a laptop and pulled up a video file. This was buried deep in one of Daniel's encrypted drives. We almost missed it. The video showed Daniel, much younger, sitting in what appeared to be a therapist's office. "I can't stop the thoughts," he said to someone off camera, his voice breaking. "I know they're wrong. I know I need help. But I'm afraid of what happens if anyone finds out." Rebecca watched, transfixed, as a young Daniel, perhaps in his early 20s, described his attraction to children and his fear that he would eventually act on these impulses. "I want to be normal," he pleaded. "I want a family someday, children of my own. But how can I when I know what's inside me?" The video continued for nearly an hour, documenting a therapy session where Daniel had sought help for his urges long before meeting Rebecca. The therapist recommended ongoing treatment, medication, and possibly chemical castration if the urges persisted. Daniel had nodded, seemingly committed to the treatment plan. "We checked with the licensing board," Rodriguez said, as the video ended. "The therapist died in a car accident 3 months after this session. There's no record of Daniel continuing treatment elsewhere." Rebecca sat back, her mind reeling. Daniel had known. Before they met, before they married, before they had children, he had known about his attraction to minors and had sought help, only to abandon treatment when his therapist died. Instead of continuing to fight his urges, he had created the perfect cover: a loving husband, a devoted father, a man above suspicion. "He chose our family deliberately," Rebecca whispered, the full weight of the deception crushing her anew. "He married me, a child protection specialist, for credibility. He fathered children to gain access to their friends. Everything was calculated from the beginning." Rodriguez nodded solemnly. "It seems that way. I thought you should know. Not to cause more pain, but because it might help you stop blaming yourself. This wasn't something you missed. This was something he spent his entire adult life perfecting." In the days that followed, Rebecca shared the new information with Dr. Wong, who incorporated it into their family therapy sessions. "This changes nothing about your pain," the therapist acknowledged, "but it might help you understand that this deception was extraordinary by design. Daniel created a persona specifically engineered to avoid detection." Slowly, painfully, the family began to rebuild. Emma, who had withdrawn from school after the truth about her father emerged, gradually reconnected with a small circle of trusted friends. Noah, with consistent therapy, began to speak more, though nightmares continued to plague his sleep. Rebecca threw herself into creating new family traditions and security rituals that helped the children feel safe. Open doors, transparent communication, regular security sweeps that satisfied their need for vigilance, while gradually teaching them that not everyone was watching them. 1 year after Daniel's death, Rebecca received another unexpected call, this time from an attorney representing one of Daniel's former colleagues at Evergreen Tech Solutions. "My client has been holding on to some information that he feels you should have," the attorney explained. "He was afraid of becoming implicated, but his conscience won't let him stay silent any longer." The meeting was arranged at the attorney's office with Detective Rodriguez present at Rebecca's request. The colleague, a nervous man named Thomas Walsh, could barely meet Rebecca's eyes as he explained his connection to Daniel. "We worked on a security project together 5 years ago," he began, "a high-level encryption protocol for sensitive data. Daniel was brilliant. He found workarounds for problems the rest of us couldn't solve." Thomas paused, gathering courage. "After the project ended, I noticed unusual activity on our test servers. Daniel was using our company resources to host some kind of private network. When Thomas had confronted him, Daniel explained it away as a personal project, a secure storage solution for family photos and videos. He'd offered Thomas access to the project and a cut of potential profits if he kept quiet about the unauthorized use of company resources. "I never looked at what he was storing," Thomas insisted, his voice breaking. "I swear I didn't know. But after everything came out in the news, I checked the server logs, the traffic patterns, the encryption methods. They matched known patterns used by exploitation networks. I should have reported it years ago." Thomas slid a flash drive across the table. "This contains all the server logs, access points, and network connections from Daniel's private project. The FBI might be able to use it to identify others involved in distributing the content." Rebecca felt oddly calm as she pushed the drive toward Rodriguez. "Were there others at Evergreen who knew?" Thomas shook his head. "Not that I'm aware of. Daniel compartmentalized everything. Different teams worked on different aspects of projects without seeing the whole picture. It was his signature management style. Nobody ever had complete information except him." As they left the attorney's office, Rodriguez assured Rebecca that the information would be handled appropriately. "This could help us dismantle more of the network," he explained. "Every piece gets us closer to shutting it down completely." Rebecca nodded, but her mind had already moved beyond the investigation. Thomas's description of Daniel's management style, compartmentalization, information, control, ensuring no one person had the complete picture, wasn't just his work approach. It was how he had managed their entire family life. That night, Rebecca sat with Emma and Noah in their new living room, the space deliberately designed to feel open and safe with large windows and minimal technology. "I learned something today about Dad," she said carefully, always mindful of Dr. Wong's guidance about honesty without unnecessary detail. "He kept secrets from everyone, not just us. His whole life was built around making sure nobody ever saw the complete truth." Noah, who had recently celebrated his 15th birthday, looked up from his book. "Like when he told me I couldn't join the overnight science camp because you wouldn't allow it, but then told you I didn't want to go?" Rebecca nodded, surprised. "You never mentioned that. I didn't know until last week when Mr. Peterson asked why I changed my mind about camp. I never told Dad I didn't want to go. I was really excited about it." Emma joined the conversation, setting aside her homework. "He did the same thing with my photography class. Told me you thought it was a waste of money, but I found the permission slip in his office drawer with your signature forged." As the three of them began sharing more examples, a pattern emerged. Daniel had systematically created small divisions between them, tiny misunderstandings and perceived rejections that isolated each family member. Rebecca had thought Emma was pulling away due to typical teenage rebellion, while Emma believed her mother disapproved of her interests. Noah's anxiety hadn't developed naturally, but had been carefully cultivated by a father who wanted him dependent and isolated. He was making sure we wouldn't talk to each other, Emma realized, her voice stronger than Rebecca had heard in months. If we compared notes, we might have figured it out. The revelation, painful as it was, marked a turning point in their recovery. Together, they began to untangle the web of lies and manipulations that had shaped their family dynamics for years. Each discovered deception, once exposed to the light, lost some of its power to hurt them. 2 years after Daniel's death, the Mitchell family had created a new normal. Rebecca had returned to work at Sentinel, focusing specifically on educating families about the warning signs she had missed in her own home. Emma, now preparing for college, had channeled her experience into advocacy work, speaking at schools about privacy and technology safety. Noah, still quieter than before, but steadily improving, had developed an interest in ethical hacking and cybersecurity. On the anniversary of that fateful night, Rebecca sat alone in their backyard, watching the sunset and reflecting on everything that had happened. The federal investigation sparked by Thomas's information had led to the identification and arrest of 17 other offenders connected to Daniel's network. Victims were receiving support and resources for recovery. The Mitchell family's tragedy had, in some small way, prevented other families from experiencing similar pain. Sarah joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Rebecca accepted the cup gratefully. "I was thinking about patterns, how we can live inside them for so long without recognizing them." "You couldn't have known, Beck." "That's just it," Rebecca replied, watching the fading light play across the yard. "I think on some level I did know. There were moments, split-second intuitions that something wasn't right, but I dismissed them because they didn't fit the story I wanted to believe." She turned to face her friend. "That's what makes predators like Daniel so dangerous. They don't just deceive others, they create an entire reality that makes their behavior seem impossible. It's not about missing the signs, it's about being conditioned not to trust your own perception of them." Sarah nodded slowly. "So what do you tell people now? In your workshops?" "Trust the disconnect," Rebecca said simply. "When something feels wrong, but you can't articulate why, especially when it involves someone you love, pay attention to that feeling. It might be the only truth in a carefully constructed lie." As darkness fell, Rebecca thought about the long journey ahead. Her family would never be completely free from what Daniel had done. The scars would remain, the hypervigilance might never fully disappear, and certain triggers would always bring the trauma rushing back. But they had reclaimed their story, separating Daniel's calculated manipulations from their authentic selves. In the most painful way possible, Rebecca had learned a truth that now guided her work and her life. Safety isn't found in security systems, monitoring software, or even a gun locked in a bedroom safe. Real safety comes from connection, open communication, shared truths, and the courage to face uncomfortable realities together. Daniel had systematically destroyed those connections within their family, creating the perfect environment for his deception to flourish. The Mitchell family's new foundation was built on precisely what Daniel had worked so hard to prevent: transparency, trust, and the understanding that perfect appearances often hide the deepest darkness. Rebecca now knew that the most dangerous predators aren't strangers lurking in shadows, but trusted individuals who meticulously craft personas designed to place them above suspicion. As she went inside to join her children, Rebecca carried this knowledge like both a burden and a torch, illuminating the path forward while never forgetting the painful journey that had brought them here. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.